challenges that he was facing with his mother, with the house, with the family, trying to figure out what is going on next, whether he can get it repaired, how much it's going to cost, and how much they're going to pay for it. Now, I knew I'd be talking to someone who's got some expertise on these things, so I thought I'd get his advice for the Peach family.
Hi, I'm Glenn McGillivray. I'm Managing Director of the Institute for Catastrophic Loss Reduction at Western University.
McGillivray has his eye on the increasingly intense natural hazards in Canada that cross paths with our communities, including post-tropical storm Fiona, and what they might mean for people like Stan and Joyce Peach. So what do you make of their situation?
First of all, my heart goes out to her. That's a horrible, horrible situation. I think a lot of people aren't going to be able to rebuild on site because of erosion. I've seen some incredible shots of video over the last few days where it's just the power of the ocean is quite amazing. I would seriously consider a relocation. And I know how tough that is to have to deal with. These are lives. People have been there for decades, a lifetime. But sometimes the decision is kind of made for them. And I think strategic relocation is kind of sometimes the only option. That cliffside will just keep eroding and eroding and eroding. And it's dangerous for her. It's dangerous for her life. It's dangerous for her home and belongings. And unfortunately, that may be the only option, particularly now that she can't get insurance anymore.
Now, with regard to Stan Peach's complaints about the company that canceled the insurance on his mother's home in June, we reached out to Cooperators Insurance. It sent us a written statement that says, in part, while we are unable to comment on this individual case, we can say that we follow the industry standards for oil tanks. Guidelines such as age, location, condition, and maintenance of the tank are all important considerations to prevent costly and potentially catastrophic property and environmental damage because of spills to soil and water. Glenn McGillivray says Stan Peach's mother is not alone.
I really suspect that we're going to have a fairly high degree of non-insurance this time around because of the nature of the homes. Some of them are very old, historic, kind of shanty type of homes, just kind of sitting on rocks, not really fastened down properly, not built to any code. Probably an insurance company probably wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. We're going to be seeing a lot of that.
McGillivray is also thinking about what's happening next. He believes that rebuilding in the wake of a disaster like Fiona is a chance to keep people and the places they live in safe from future storms or other climate change-linked hazards. Then what did you make of the damage in eastern Canada?
Well, the damage is quite extensive, of course. Places like Cape Breton Island and parts of Newfoundland, Labrador, Prince Edward Island got hit quite hard. Where the landfall was in Cape Breton around the Canso Peninsula there, damage was very extensive because wind speeds were very high. You also had rough seas and heavy rains as well. So very extensive damage, but we were kind of fortunate in the case that large cities like Halifax were not totally spared, but they certainly weren't hit direct on. So this could have been a lot worse.
There's obviously a lot of trauma for people to recover from, and we're hearing that from them. And there's obviously a lot of physical damage to clean up. But I'm wondering, what opportunity is there for communities as they rebuild?
It's sad to say our hearts go out to these people, but this does give us a golden opportunity to put things back better than they were before. This is not the first time that this area has been hit by a hurricane or a tropical storm. It won't be the last time. But the science indicates that these storms will get worse and worse and more common, more powerful. And so it just doesn't make sense to put things back the way they were. We should put things back better. We have that knowledge. We know what to do. We just really have to get on with it.
Okay, well, let's talk about what that exactly means. Your organization works with communities as they rebuild from disasters. Are you going to be reaching out to any of those municipalities in Atlantic Canada to see if they could use the help? I mean, I think about Port aux Basques, which was just devastated.
Right, and that's exactly the plan. We recently launched a program called Resilience and Recovery, where we will work with communities that were badly hit by natural hazards and make sure that when they recover, they do so in a better way so that they could either prevent or mitigate the impacts of future events. So we're working with Lytton, BC, which was almost completely wiped out by wildfire last year. We're working with Calgary, Alberta after the huge June 2020 hailstorm. And we're working with Barrie, Ontario after their tornado that they experienced last year on things like changing building code and awareness programs and things of that nature. So our plan is to reach out to the mayor of Port aux Basques, offer up our assistance under this program, and see how we can help.
Let's take those examples that you just cited one by one. You look at how homes can be rebuilt to make them safer in the face of extreme wind, hail, wildfire, flooding. You listed Lytton. So exactly what are you trying to do to help Lytton?
So we've been working with Village Council there on a bylaw, which would require the reconstruction there to be wildfire-resistant construction. So there is the National Research Council about a year ago published a Wildland Urban Interface Fire Guide. That guidebook kind of gives us a good roadmap on how to reconstruct buildings so that they're wildfire resilient. And through that and through also the Fire Smart program, we're looking at a bylaw that would require that homes be put back, not the way they were, but to be ready for the next possible wildfire that may strike that community.
And Calgary?
Calgary got hit with a tremendous hailstorm in June 2020. It was by far the costliest hailstorm in Canadian history. It cost insurance companies about $1.5 billion. A lot of people in the Ward 5 area, the northeast corner of the city were hit quite hard. We worked with Calgary on a few things. One was on an awareness program. So we launched Hail Smart to educate people about how they can protect their homes and their vehicles and businesses against hail. But we're also working with Calgary to press the Alberta government to change building code to make it a requirement that all roofs in new construction have a Class 4 roofing product on it. That's a high impact or impact resilient roofing product that would prevent a great deal of damage from hailstorms, would prevent a whole lot of grief for people, and would prevent a whole lot of roofing materials from having to go into landfill. Calgary's not able to change the building code on its own. It has to work with the province.
And finally, Barrie, Ontario.
So Barrie got hit with that tornado over a year ago. I think some homes are still not quite whole yet. We're working with Barrie on also awareness programs to educate the people of Barrie about tornado risk. It's the second time in many years that they've been hit by a tornado. But also, similar to Calgary, we're helping Barrie push the Ontario government to make certain wind resilience features a requirement in all new construction. Things like hurricane straps and a few other things that we're pushing to have in the Ontario code.
So lots of discussion about building codes and municipalities and provinces getting involved, but you're also in talks behind the scenes with insurance companies about these ideas, which sounds really interesting. How much buy-in do you get when you make the suggestion that insurance companies should actually pay to climate-proof homes?
A couple of years ago, short years ago, the response wasn't great. But we're finding that that mood and the response has changed quite dramatically in just that short period of time. There's a lot of work and a lot of planning that has to go into this, but we've struck a working group with about, I think, 14 insurance companies on it. And some many of them actually are plotting ahead with a Build Back Better type of plan that can come in primarily one of two ways. They can either create a brand new product where the homeowner would pay a slightly larger premium. And if they were to have a damaged or destroyed home, they would get one back that was built better than code. That's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is just that insurance companies can, quote unquote, eat the cost of these modifications. And in many cases, they're very inexpensive. But we have companies that are looking at both ways. It's going to take some time, but we are getting there. And I think the response is a lot better now than it was just a year or two ago.
Are you at the stage where you can tell us the name of any of those insurance companies in case listeners want to take out a policy with them?
We are not at that stage yet. I wouldn't say it's early days. We're somewhere in the middle, but we're not quite at that point yet.
Well, we'll keep track of that then. But so who is footing the bill right now then if someone loses a home or there's damage from something that is climate related? Who pays if you want to build back better?
If you want to build back better, that is pretty much entirely up to the homeowner to foot those costs. Now, there are small examples of insurance companies giving their clients money to improve things. For example, many insurance companies will give you $1,000 or $1,500 or sometimes even more if you've had a basement flood, a sewer backup, and they will, of course, clean everything up and then they'll give you an extra 1,000 or 1,500 to put mitigation in. A lot of companies have done that. There are a couple of other little examples, but for the most part, if you want to put things back better than the code, the homeowner normally has to pick up that tab.
I fail to understand why an insurance company wouldn't want to do that, because the consequence of not doing it is that they face bigger and bigger payouts, don't they?
Well, that's true. It's kind of a balancing act. One of the things that we hear is that insurance companies are concerned about investing a lot of money in a given home when that client could just leave the company after that and go to another company. And of course, one of the remedies to that is if the whole industry did it, then that wouldn't matter as much, right?
Right.
And it's just cost as well. So, if you think about it, if you're paying $1,000 for your homeowner insurance or $1,200 for your homeowner insurance, putting $5,000 into that home or $10,000 into that home is several years of premium. And sometimes the math, may not quite work out. So we're working through these things. But going back to my first idea there, we're hoping that if enough insurance companies do this, then that retention issue won't be a problem.
Now, it does cost a lot of money to rebuild, and there's more frequent destruction of homes and communities from all of those extreme weather, storms, wildfire, flooding. How often are insurance companies saying, that's enough, we just can't keep covering all of these repairs?
Well, I have to say that has been an issue for decades, and it's not a new thing in Canada. There have been, situations where companies have become aware of, areas in cities, certain areas in cities that get a lot of sewer backup, for example, and that's been problematic. I remember these discussions happening 30 years ago. It's happening probably a bit more and more, and it's going to happen still more as climate change continues to bite in, and as our communities get larger and risk is more concentrated. One of the areas is floodplains and high risk flood areas. Another area to be concerned with is wildfire risk areas. And as we become aware of those areas better, as technology improves, as mapping and hazard modeling improves and things like that, I think it's going to become more evident that certain homes are really, really in harm's way, and that it may be difficult to insure them going forward. Right now, we're not in a crisis period. The insurance industry is working quite well in Canada. It's a healthy industry. But there are always going to be examples of where, certain homeowners are having problems getting certain coverages.
Right. I was wondering, is there ever a time in a community where you just simply have to say, no, you can't build here again?
Yeah. And we tried this in Fort McMurray after the wildfire in 2016. A little bit after that, there was a flood event. And some insurance companies said, listen, normally we require that you rebuild on the same property, the same lot. But in this case, we'll make an exception and we will honor the claim even if the homeowner moves to another lot. And nobody really took them up on that offer, believe it or not. So there are examples of that happening. But I think we're going to see more and more where insurance companies kind of waive that whole idea that you must rebuild on the same lot. I think there's probably going to be more companies that are open to the idea of helping to relocate people in harm's way.
If we can come back to Fiona for a moment, I'm wondering what happens to the people who are living in Fiona's path, whose homes or apartments aren't covered by insurance.
That's where the province of Nova Scotia would step in with disaster assistance.
Or Newfoundland, I guess, yeah.
And Newfoundland and Prince Edward Island.
Yeah.
So it'd all be the provinces at a provincial level. Those provinces can then go to the federal government through the disaster financial assistance arrangements and get some money back. But homeowners can't go directly to the federal government. Only the provinces can do that. We're seeing costs for disaster assistance, provincial and federal, going way up over the years. It's just like insurance in the sense that these payouts are getting more and more frequent and higher.
So that suggests that government also has to be involved in the resiliency of the buildings as well.
Absolutely. It's costing them, i.e. you and I as taxpayers, an increasing amount of money every year. And that's an important point. This whole idea that governments pay, it's you and I that are paying for this stuff, right? So, you and I are paying for sometimes somebody's river view that goes bad or somebody's nice cabin in the woods somewhere.
You and I have been talking about building codes and payouts and insurance companies, but at the end of the day, what we're talking about are people's homes, livelihoods, neighborhoods. I'm wondering why this work matters to you.
Yeah, my boss always says it's not work that we do when you are incentivized to help people and to make our society safer. It doesn't seem like work. And some days I have to argue with them on that. We're very busy these days, and unfortunately, when we're busy, it means there's a lot of grief out there. We've gained a huge reputation in the Canadian disaster risk reduction field, and we're just going to plod ahead. We're making some headway. We're going to make more. That's what kind of keeps us going.
I guess you're one of those people who would prefer to be put out of business.
I joke and say that all the time. So in a couple of weeks, we're going to celebrate our 25th anniversary. And I say we would have liked to have put ourselves out of business years ago. It just wasn't in the cards. We don't control everything. If we controlled the discourse out there and the action, then we would have put ourselves out of business. But we're not quite there yet. But maybe the next 25 will be out of business.
Glenn McGillivray, thank you very much.
Thank you.